It's the Tuesday workshop at the Thinker Growth Community, the faith-based, the business accelerator that helps faith-based founders change the world. All right. So today it's going to be, it's Thanksgiving week. So we're light on the crew. It's me and you, Paul.
That's right.
And
then
this
there were two.
dark cup of coffee.
And this blue bottle of BCAAs.
BCAAs.
Branched chain amino acids, if you have not heard the term, if you're new to the world of fitness and nutrition and supplements, I have drunk BCAAs with my water for the last 8 years. Part of the reason is I can't stand to just drink water all day. Like 1 cup of water and I'm fine, but they tell me I need to have 10 or 12. So yeah, I'm like, well, then it's got to have a taste to it.
BCAAs. Well, that is not the topic for the day. However, we could riff on all sorts of things. I did my share of analysis into nutrition, especially when I owned the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. But the opportunity for today is to discuss what? What were we chatting about yesterday?
Well, we were kicking around a couple of big ideas, which I think, the more we talk about them, the more we'll begin to see how they connect and collide with one another. One of them was that this experiment you challenged me to perform probably 6 or 7 months ago, which I took you up on and paved the way for the rebranding and founding of Emissary, publishing house that you and I are building. And recently I was in a local group here in Phoenix, and I decided, as the conversation went the direction it did, that I would share the example. And as soon as I did, heads around the table went, what did you do? And I restated it for them. And they said, could you put that in a case study and like on a sheet of paper and share it with us? And I'm like, sure. And then I was just bringing that up to you yesterday, and we had a good laugh about the fact that, what is often obvious or right in front of your face, what's even a time-honored practice, right? All we're doing in this particular case is doing what marketing and advertising and research agencies have done for decades. We're just doing a different version of it. Anyway, we talked about that, and I think there's a lot of merit to that. And then we also talked about how your interaction and conversation will change with people when you have a firm foundation and incidents or interactions crop up where people are operating on a more primitive and emotional level, but the amount of energy you've vested in clarifying your position, clarifying your identity and your values and all of that leaves you free to let people come and go and not chase them. And when they engage you from an emotional level, it frees you up to respond with a much more intellect-driven method of interacting with them, which in turn helps you separate the wheat from the chaff and pursue the people you really should be spending time with, and let God deal with everyone else. And so, anyway, I'm excited to talk about these two topics because both you and I can wax philosophical about them for quite a while.
Not sure what's more valuable, waxing philosophical or providing a top 10 list of things people need to do.
That's true. But today, since we are so unfortunate to be missing Ron and Naomi and TC, that means we have a few extra minutes. So we can probably try and do a little bit of both. But to introduce the first half of it, what I'll just say is that at the beginning of this year, we were talking about what we would offer to the marketplace. And even after 4 years of offering ghostwriting, editing, and to some extent advice surrounding marketing and publishing books, um, I still had a lack of confidence that what I had to offer really could be communicated to the marketplace, despite seeing examples of it, right? Despite seeing other companies and individuals out there who are doing it. I'm like, technically, I'm not doing much different from what they're doing, but I didn't feel confident that the market really wanted it. So what I found helpful when you hashed this out was you said, okay, well, um, what I would suggest you do is reach out to, you know, 40 or 50 people on LinkedIn who are more or less within the target demographic of who we want to reach. And then you do a simple voice message outreach and say, look, here's what we think the problem is, and here's the solution we would offer to that. The only questions I have you as in the prospect or the person that I'm messaging is, A, do you think we have the right handle on the situation? And B, if this were offered to you, what kind of price range would begin to scare you away from it?
Mm.
So I had never done anything like that before because no one had ever suggested it to me. So I said, that's a good idea. I could immediately grasp that that would make me more confident, or it would tell me you're wasting your time if I went and did the research up front. And as I went through it, I suddenly realized this is what my dad used to do as an advertising agency owner. They did focus groups, endless focus groups. I mean, he had stacks of audio tapes in his office, right? Because they had to do it in the old fashioned days. I looked at the labels on those audio tapes and they said focus groups, this company, focus groups, this account, right? I never knew what it was at the time. Well, I know what it was. I know what it is now. I just didn't realize I could do it by myself through voice messages on LinkedIn. So it never occurred to me to do that. I always thought I have to hire an ad agency, to come and do that for me. And the truth is we can do it by ourselves. So by way of introduction, that's the story in the background. And I think I'm already beginning to see a little pathway of how that's connecting to the other subject we're going to discuss.
It always surprises me that when I've invited people with business ideas, typically would be entrepreneurs, people who are actually prior to, uh, who haven't yet done anything, right? You were selling stuff and doing work. But a lot of people have come to me through the years, like, hey, I got an idea. And the first thing is that I've asked them to do is go out, like I mentioned to you, and talk to people about the problem. See if it is a problem for anybody else except you. Also, then figure out how they're solving that problem right now so that you understand the alternatives, because people are solving a problem already. They're either ignoring it or they're doing something. They're taking steps to do something about it. Then saying, well, here's the solution I have. And here's, and then, do you think you'd engage with that solution? Ask them some questions around that. And then what would you expect to pay? Or what would you be willing to pay? What would that be worth to you? There are a handful of different ways you can say it. And it
Sure.
has surprised me through the years how many people are just flat out unwilling to do that work.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, go talk to 100 people on the street. It's like a person wants to launch a hot dog stand. Want to launch a hot dog stand? All right. Where are you going to launch that? Oh, in my downtown. Oh, okay. How many people come down there? I don't know, but I think it really needs a hot dog stand. Okay. Why don't you go sit on the street for a while and count the number of people? Why don't you ask them all as they pass? Hey, if I had hot dogs for sale right now, would you buy one for $5, whatever it is? Nobody does that.
Yeah.
Just that basic research to validate the idea, whether it's a good idea or whether it was not a good idea or something that only you thought was a good idea. And kudos to you, because you stepped right into that work and got a lot of great feedback from people. First of all, you have a good circle of people who will give you honest feedback. A lot of people don't have that. They've got a bunch of well-meaning yes men around them who are like, yeah, you can do it. I think a hot dog's gonna be great. It's like, well, you don't even live in my community, so I don't even know what you're talking about. You have no ability to speak into it because you don't even live here. So a lot of people just have those types of folks gathered around them. You have a whole group of people who have been through some level of success. They're willing to give you the honest responses because they know that if they don't, they're actually pushing you in the wrong direction, and
Mhm.
they care less about your feelings and more about your success. Uh, and beyond that, though, you then went to a whole range of folks to get feedback, people who didn't necessarily know you or love you. And that is that's market research. Or in some circles they call it voice of the customer. Go out and get voice of the customer feedback. What does the customer think about this before you create the solution?
I think that occurred to me immediately from other things that I had learned from you prior to that, such as in your book, right? What could be available on Amazon? Anywhere else fine books are sold, right? Point to the, yeah, right there. Jason, sorry, if you're listening and you don't know why I've suddenly changed the intonation of my voice, it's because Jason and I have an inside joke about being self-aggrandizing, shameless self-promoters. And we
I would get into
regularly,
it now, but you can find it on page 184 of my new book.
we regularly
Hook 'em.
rib each other about that. So
Hook 'em and sink
um,
'em.
that's right. Yeah. But in your book, available everywhere fine books are sold and on Amazon, you said you talked about like I think it was a song you wrote or something, and you shared it with your mother. And all mothers everywhere, whenever their children bring them the sloppiest, crappiest artwork or whatever they do, mothers do one thing, right? Oh, you did so good, right? And I'm like, my mother, God rest her soul, no longer with us. Um, but I know she would have said that, right? If I said, "Mom, this is what I'm thinking about doing," she'd go for it, right?
Yeah.
So we expect that from our mothers, and then I've got friends who just I do have friends who the way they behave, it feels like sometimes I can do no wrong because they're just big-hearted, encouraging type of people, right? Um, And I said, "That's great. I don't want to forsake or abandon those people, but I need a little bit more objectivity. I need to talk to some people who have no problem giving me the truth in love right between the eyes, right? If it's going to hurt, I'd rather it hurt before I take it to market than after."
Oh, yeah.
So I'll never forget. I've got this friend. He lives in France, but he's an Irish executive coach, and the Irish can be so wonderfully blunt and just frank about what they think, right? And they'll talk your ear off too. And he in this form, he's classic, true to classic Irish form. And he said, "If I just want to play devil's advocate with you for a little, I'm not really sure on what it is you're putting forth. I need more specifics. I need more information, right?" And I was like, "Thank you. Thank you. That's what I need to hear because I need to get better at communicating this because part of the reason I'm not selling as much as I'd like to is because I'm not good at communicating what the value is and what I offer." And so, uh, yeah, I realized, I had a lot of good friends who fit the target demographic who would generally encourage me. I also realized I had people who were friends who knew me personally, who fit the demographic, who would challenge me. And best of all, I knew I had this, I have about nearly 4,000 followers on LinkedIn, many of whom are my followers because they were part of campaigns aimed at them as the target demographic. And I said, I can approach those people too. And, they might not be willing to give me the time of day, or they might say, "I got a minute. What do you got?" And several of them did. And I said, "What do you think?" And most of them said the same thing. I really like the overall idea. I might be curious about some of the specifics, but the idea as you've presented it, the problem that you've identified the solution you're offering and the price range you're putting it in is exactly what I would want and more or less what I would expect to pay for it.
Yeah. You can only find that information out when you get to your potential customer. And that's also why over time, I think uh, when when we mature as we mature as entrepreneurs, the we have to come into this recognition that not everybody that we know is a customer of our product or service and don't have as big of a voice as we would give them in our other matters,
Mm.
right? The person who is the encourager, for instance, the encourager in your group is great when you need encouragement. They also, uh, if they were buying your product, they might also, because they're an encourager, be inclined to buy your product and misjudge the product or service because they like you as a person and they're just an encourager. They like to feel your energy getting, raising up. So we have to look at them and go, well, how much of voice do I give them?
Hmm.
Or do I even talk to them because they're not a customer of mine? They're not going to buy this anyhow. And do I need encouragement? Do I need an attaboy? We got to kind of get out of this idea of needing attaboys. And I don't know if it's a cultural thing or if it's just what I hear in the wind. We Criticism can teach us things. We have to judge ourselves. We have to judge our product, service, or message before it gets to the market. Because when it gets to the market, that's what people are doing. They are
Yeah.
judging the idea. They are being critical of the idea. If we can't be critical of an idea, one of our own ideas, we'll never survive bringing it to market because that's the first thing that happens.
Yeah.
And due to no fault of any, it's like not even a fault matter. People just we judge whether we like the product, we like the message, we like the service, we like the individual. We just do that to make it through the day.
Hmm.
And especially when we're buying something, we're exchanging some sort of value. Of course, we judge it. Is this worth the value that I'm exchanging? And so we have
Hmm.
to really, I think, be critical, and that requires number one, I think, being okay with hearing the criticism and knowing that simply because a person doesn't like my idea, that on the face of it is just factual information. It doesn't have to hurt me. I am not my ideas. I have ideas, and
Yeah.
some of them are crap, and some of them are amazing, and some of them that are amazing I thought were crap. Right? So I'm not necessarily a good judge of my own ideas, but I've got them. Then I bring them to other people and test it against the broader set of people that would be buyers for my product, service, or message and hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
And be be willing to look at the evidence as a court would look at the evidence and determine whether to pursue this or change it. Or that's why I like the one of the things you said is people said, well, I think this is it's a good idea. I like kind of the direction you're headed, but I need more specifics, which is a perfect time to be
Hmm.
doing market research. Whereas too many people get way out ahead and they're like, I've already have a prototype and I've put my life savings into this prototype. Do you want to buy it? And they're like, yeah, I would if it was like this and that. And you're like, oh no,
Yeah.
but it's already made. It's like, no, test the direction first. And then as you do that, refine the direction, refine the specifics in coordination with your potential buyer. And that
Yeah.
requires number one, courage to be able to hear the feedback in the first place.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm thinking for some reason I found myself thinking of President Abraham Lincoln's example because, and he's not the only politician to do this, but he's one of probably a small minority of them who actually did it. But there's an entire book about how he chose his cabinet called Team of Rivals. Now, of course, these have to be loyal rivals, right? If you have disloyal ones who are actively trying to sabotage you, that's a different kind of rival. But the idea is you need a foil, or you might actually need several foils. You might need people who not only oppose you, but oppose each other and question everything that you're doing. And it sort of takes me back to the conversations that we had with one potential author, Jason, a few months ago, who was trying to build a book on that very foundational concept. That
Mm. Mhm.
right, the most successful people in the world, at every level of what you could call success, are there because they bring foils along with them. They bring the fool, they bring the clown, they bring somebody who can easily make light or mockery or debunk whatever biases and preconceptions they're bringing to the table.
Mhm.
That's the hallmark of it. Another thing I told a young couple that I'm helping to mentor recently, I said, when you want to get better at a sport, you play against people who are better than you. Why? Because they expose your weaknesses and how you still don't understand the game. And when I was playing racquetball many years ago, I wanted to get better at it. And I approached an older player there who I saw was, could shut me out basically and win 3 straight games, 15-0. And I said, "Do you mind just telling me what you see that I'm doing wrong? And if you can tell me how to fix it, I'd love to hear." And he said, "Sure." So went out on the court and we played for a little bit, and then he stopped and he said, "Now, do you see how I'm standing here in the middle of the court and you're running in circles, catching up with every time I hit the ball?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Because part of the reason you're doing that is because you're out of position. You need to be making me go chase the ball so you can stand in the middle of the court. Then you're dominating the game." And I said, "I guess I just never noticed that." Same sort of principle. We, when you take a product or a service to market, if you give the market a chance to think about it and make judgments about it, which you're right, you cannot escape human judgment because every single day, every single human being is making hundreds of judgments. We're not talking here about judging like being critical and being obnoxious and, finger pointing. We're talking about yes or no, this way or that way, blue or green, left or right, right? Those are all judgments. Spend money, don't spend money. Save money, don't save money. Buy this product, buy that product. Invest in this, invest in. Which one do I choose? I have to make a judgment. So the best way to do that is to allow it to be judged before you invest time and money and energy into it. Because you're right. I have done it myself. I have taken stuff to market and I've found people saying, "Okay, on with my day." And I, it was profoundly painful. Um, it's profoundly painful to invest a whole bunch of work and time and energy into something you're passionate about, only to have the market yawn. Okay, on with my day.
Yeah, there's a contrarian principle used to prevent groupthink, and that is to have one person on the team look at the other side, kind of like devil's advocate. I don't remember what the um I'm trying to I don't remember what the term is. I'm trying to look it up. But the too often when we get a tight knit group that likes each other together, the there is just the human nature at play where we end up in groupthink. We all just glad hand each other and it sort of becomes homogenous. And the challenge of that is that unless that group is very representative of the market as a whole, the group's going to be wrong and you'll come up with a solution that the market doesn't want. So you plant somebody in your group who is there to simply fight to oppose everything. And as you oppose things, it's kind of like a good court of law. One of the and I'll get back to that thing in a second. In court, let's say there's a defense attorney who is there fighting representing a murderer. There's evidence that that murderer did the crime. And yet the court goes through the process of hearing all of the evidence, and the defense must come up with a proposed reason that that person should not be not shouldn't be guilty of murder.
Hmm.
Now, why is that? Because some people look at that, but that's crazy. You should just, like, it's clear they murdered them. Just give them the punishment. Well, when we weigh evidence, right? If here's the evidence that here's what they did, why they did it, there's that stacks up to a certain amount, right? It has a certain weight to it, a heftiness, a validity to it.
Hmm.
If the defense has says, well, here's the proposed, here's what we propose. Actually, here's what happened, and here's why they did it. If that has greater weight, well, then somebody has to judge. And so you can have a person who is guilty, and yet guilty in a way that does not, make them guilty of murder.
Yeah.
So I think when we look at a group, the group will by nature stack up evidence to think that the group is right. Whatever product,
Hmm.
service, or message you're coming to, you're going to think it's friggin' amazing. And you'll fight until you think it's amazing, right? Even if you don't start off thinking it's amazing, you'll fight till you're gonna think it's amazing. And then, and if nobody's there to oppose that and say, "Mm, here's why that's not amazing,"
Yeah.
then you end up in groupthink. And if you have somebody there to oppose it, you listen to that other voice, you get to weigh the evidence. Well, here's why I think it's amazing. Oh, but you know what? They're stacking up these good points. Oh, wait a second. Maybe it's not
Hmm.
quite as amazing as we think. And that takes layers of of working through human nature and team dynamics to be able to accept the fact that your idea is just getting poked at to see if it will be strong. You have to go through that a handful of times at least to be able to just trust the process and go, yeah, I am willing to put myself out there. Here's my idea, beat it up, make this better. Tell me all the ways this isn't going to work. And then take those really, I think, under advisement. Um, yeah, that's a process that a lot of entrepreneurs never make it through.
And I think spiritually, when you see a leader who can do that, what you're observing is someone who sees that the principle is more valuable than the money. Because, right, if you take this several years down the road and now you're leading a company of hundreds of employees, there's a lot of people making rash decisions like that, surrounded by yes men who are self-sabotaging their own organizations. I mean, the stories are rife. There's not a lot of people on the other side saying, my ego and my instincts and my impulses tell me just do it. But I'm not that dumb. Made mistakes like that before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in front of my board. I'm going to put it in front of my team. I'm going to put it in front of my shareholders. I'm going to put it in front of my customers and see, do they like this? Do they think it's a good idea? And am I prepared to scuttle the idea or go back and at least refine it and retool it and reshape it and put it in a different format that the feedback tells me if I do it this way, I'll find momentum, I'll find success. I think, I think as I look back on my own journey, I can see now why I have not been allowed to progress the way I want to. Because God was right. I hadn't done the homework. But every time I do the homework, right? I like to say every time I hear someone say the devil's in the details, I say, well, you know what? God is in the details too. Because when you come out and do the homework, then it creates this different posture, which is the second half of what we're talking about here. So we were talking about this gentleman running for Prime Minister of Canada Pierre Poilievre. And this video that went viral on YouTube of a snarky journalist coming at him with emotional talking points and arguments, and he disarmed him artlessly. It seemed like effortlessly, right? So he's like, "It seems like you're taking a lot of the populist position there." And he said, "So what does that mean?" "Well, you're doing the Donald Trump sort of playbook." "Donald Trump? Who says that?" "Well, a lot of people out there. Can you name one?" "I'm sure a lot of Canadians." "Well, you're the one who asked the question, right? I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can name somebody, right?" And he just went on and on and on.
We can pull that video up. We got time. What was his name again?
Pierre Poilievre. While you're looking for that, yeah, I won't spoil the rest of it if we can play the audio. But there's this wonderful sense that you get from someone who has taken the time and done the research and put in the effort to getting ironclad on what they believe and what they stand for, such that emotional and primitive questions and arguments like that don't faze them. And that's the difference of what we're talking about. And I'm just gonna say ahead of time that as soon as I followed your advice on that and went in, it internally, a shift occurred for me, and I could feel it. I could feel that no matter how much the appeal of making a quick buck once had on me, I knew I can't keep doing that. I can't keep trying to take on clients I have no business serving,
Mhm.
because they're going to flake out, or they're going to be unhappy, or they're going to, they have a different idea in mind than what I was actually going to provide them, which defeats the purpose from the get-go. I shouldn't be chasing people like that. And so I became a lot more free to just say, "Yeah, okay, not for me."
Yeah, which actually makes you confident. That freedom leads to confidence in presenting what you really want to present. The solution will work.
Yes.
And it before you have that confidence, we tend to be okay with solutions that will sort of kind of work. We we
Right.
think we think we're going to get them there. We'll start here, but we'll get them there because this is what they're really going to get. Here's Pierre's thing. I think we can pull this up. Can you hear the audio? No. One moment, please. We can do this. I know we can.
I was going to message you privately, and then you went
I
and
I
asked.
figured I'd check.
But we have great technical capabilities here on the Thinker Growth workshop. And so we have every confidence it'll roll forward. I can see the video. Let's see if are we going to get it done?
They struggle to actually find young people to do work. And of course, housing is a problem and healthcare is a problem. As was mentioned earlier, the hospital here gets closed quite frequently. Nothing to do with vaccinations. I don't believe it's a doctor issue. It's more a shortage of doctors. So what do you do in the meantime? I mean, you've got lots of plans for building houses, etc. But in the sort of immediate spectrum, what do you do to
create a Blue Seal test to quickly license the 20,000 immigrant doctors we have in Canada? Many of them are prevented from ever working, and they give up on getting a job as a doctor, and they end up taking low-wage work for the rest of their lives. I'm proposing a simple Blue Seal testing standard that would apply right across Canada. Take the test, get the license, get to work within 60 days.
Okay. And I mean, that obviously you're going to encounter some opposition from the College of Medicine, et cetera, across the provinces.
Yeah,
so how do you deal with that issue?
You push forward. There's not easy street leads to a dead end.
That's
Best hard roads lead to the best destinations. We're no longer going to accept that this or that gatekeeping bureaucracy stands in the way of obvious common sense solutions.
So that's I'll try and find the other part of this. I think we're coming up on it actually, but so he's having just a normal exchange with a reporter, like any of us, would have with a reporter, or we've seen we've seen online. And then I think he starts getting into the meat of it here, where they start having a different exchange.
It is unacceptable that 20,000 doctors can't work in Canada when we have a massive shortage. And when people come to me and say, yeah, but this or that clerk or bureaucracy is not going to be happy, that's life.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of vested interests and bureaucracies that are going to be very unhappy when I'm Prime Minister.
Okay. On the topic, I mean, in terms of your sort of strategy currently, you're obviously taking the populist pathway.
What does that mean?
So, well, appealing to people's more emotional levels, I would guess. I mean,
What do you mean by that?
certainly you tap very strong ideological language quite frequently.
Like what?
Left wing, this and that, right wing. I mean, it's that type of ideological thing.
I never really talk about left
But
or right.
anyways,
I don't really believe in that.
Okay. A lot of people would say that you're simply taking a page out of the Donald Trump book.
Like which people would say that?
Well, I'm sure a great many Canadians, but
Like who?
I don't know who, but
Well, you're the one who asked the question, so
Yeah.
you must know somebody.
okay. I'm sure there's some out there, but anyways,
Some
the
people
point of this question is, I mean, why should Canadians trust you with their vote, given, not just the sort of.
All right. So the question is at the end, why should Canadians trust you with their vote? That's the question.
Yeah.
All the other questioning was all the other lead up to that was the loaded part of the question. Hey, the point I'd really like to make is you're this and you're that and you're that and you're that. And I love how he shuts him down. I mean, that's what you're getting at. He shuts him down with facts and being very specific. If you're going to say this big broad brush, to be very specific. Well, a lot of people. Who? Give me the evidence. Give me the weight of the evidence. And I don't know where you're going to go with this, but lead on.
Well, again, the reason I thought of it was that we were talking back and forth about the importance of doing the research, like we talked about, doing the focus groups, doing the hard work ahead of time. And it occurred to me that anytime I've ever done that, right? Anytime I've ever taken the time to withdraw from the arena of ideas or products or services, whatever, and invested time to research and study and think about things, and absorb information, and more importantly, to rehearse that information, to remember it by having, sharpening discussions around it. It's made me more formidable than I would have been if I hadn't done it. Not invincible, right? Not like I have a crystal ball and can see everything. But to go back again to the example of Abraham Lincoln, most people know that he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Most people know he was president during the Civil War. Most people know he freed the slaves, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, we all know those bullets. We don't know much about his biography before he became president, which is where the real gold is if you look into it, right? And so one thing that you should know about Lincoln is that he spent most of his 30s and 40s and early 50s prior to becoming president as a nobody who had lost 8 straight elections that he'd run for and had entered a season of major depression. He'd walked away from his wedding the first time because he couldn't afford to support his wife. So he went back to practicing law, which was the only thing he knew how to do professionally. And that took him on in those days, you didn't have a courtroom in every town. You had a traveling band of judges, lawyers, bailiffs, et cetera, who traveled from town to town and held court. And so during that time, right, Lincoln spent weeks, months, years on the road with a group of his peers. And after they would argue all day in court, they would go to taverns and argue all night, kicking back and forth. What's the merits of this case? What's the precedent? How do we determine this? How do we judge this? Who's guilty? Who's innocent? Who has to pay? Who goes free, right? And Lincoln would stay up later and get up earlier than all of them. And he would read the Constitution and the Federalist Papers and the Founding Fathers and American history and English law and all of the precedents that built into that. So that when he shows up on the debate stage in 1858 against Douglas, he's a much more formidable opponent. He doesn't win that election, but 2 years later, he runs to the presidency and he does win it. And he had this ability to go out and talk to audiences of people who would vote for him and illustrate the example of examples of slavery and several other issues in front of people who would otherwise ignore it or dismiss it and make them think about it. Where did he get that ability from? He got it from doing the research. And he was able to articulate it and project it with confidence because he had done homework and he'd sharpened what he believed by all that arguing back and forth with his fellow lawyers. So when it comes to then I see an example like this of a guy who's just cool as a cucumber. Up comes this snarky journalist who wants to throw all the usual trope at him about, oh, you're just taking a page out of Donald Trump's playbook. And he says, which page? Can you show me the page? You're just appealing to the populist. What does that mean? What do you mean populist? Give me specifics. He doesn't do it because he doesn't know, right? He hasn't done his homework. He's just making the emotional argument that all the other emotional people are making. And here's a guy who's like, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't work on me. I've done my homework. So when we're in business, right, we're up against the same thing. Well, maybe you should go do this. Maybe you should go help this person. Maybe here, I'm looking to do that. No, actually, no, you're not. Like we tell a lot of people that, right? I want to write a book. No, you don't. You don't really want to do that. I know you think you do, but let me make clear to you what that actually means. And then you decide whether you want to write a book. So I'll yield the floor.
Yeah. Emotions can lead us to accept those things which are not true. Because emotions don't, we're emotional creatures. We make emotional decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole lot of complexity to that, but we will overlook all sorts of facts because we have a great emotional connection with somebody, and we will go, on a rampage, to, against somebody who we, have a terrible feeling about. When in fact, if there was somebody who didn't have any emotion in it, they just sat back and watched the facts. The facts don't say either one, and that's where the really following the facts and what the facts say is super. That's that idea of market research, that you go ask the people who have the potential to be your customers factual questions. Do you see this? Here's a problem I see. Do you see this problem? Great. How do you solve that problem right now? Or do you have that problem? Right? Yeah, I do have that problem. How do you solve it now? Great. Here's my solution. Here's why I think it's better. What do you think? And then what would you pay for it? Put it all into a spreadsheet. The more information you have, the better informed you can make it. And fight against the tendency to just believe that you're right, because you're not. You are already wrong in some way, to some degree you are not yet aware of. And it could be a very big degree. And you're just ignorant. And that's okay. We all get to be ignorant. So don't get hung up on the fact that you're ignorant. It's fine.
Yeah.
And, I can't remember who, I don't know, we were having a discussion, I think it was yesterday, about somebody who you were messaging back and forth with at one point in time, right? And the feeling, this might not be factual, right? But the feeling that came from all that was, this person this is what I believe, right? and I'm right. And it's funny because every time we kind of do that, I just think of like a little kid, 9-year-old, let's say, 10-year-old, 11, in that range, 9 to
Hmm.
11, when they're playing a game and they lose the game. And many times it's just like, oh, well, that's a stupid game anyhow. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, wait a second here. How did we get there? Right? It's
Yeah.
just human nature to eventually be like, "Eh, eh, eh." And I always think, and I think I said it in my book, which is available, fine booksellers everywhere. Um, this idea that, you're great, you're amazing as a person, and you've got some great ideas, but don't get too hung up on how amazing you are, because there are times, when you can't even put on the right socks in the morning.
Hmm.
Like, so relax for a
Happened this
minute.
morning.
Yeah. Yeah, right. You could be totally wrong about something. And it doesn't mean that you as an individual are not a great entrepreneur, that your idea
Yeah.
isn't gonna, take off at some point in time. But I do stand behind this one statement. The statement is, the first time's the worst time.
Yeah.
So you got to get past the first time. So when you're proposing this idea of voice of the customer or market research, go off, ask one person, and you'll go like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. And it'll take the edge off. You'll be fine. By the time you get to 50, you will have, it'll be a sport now, and you'll be good at it. And
Yeah.
then, and it will make you better, because the first time you put your idea out there, it's probably the worst idea too. Once you get to the iteration 10, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that we needed to have this thing on there,
Yeah.
whatever it is. I didn't know I needed to say that thing. That was the one thing that would have made it better. It's like, yeah, of course. We all see
Yeah.
that in hindsight. Ideally, we train ourselves to develop foresight, and foresight requires a further and wider vision, and that requires somebody outside of your own head, somebody with
Hmm.
different experiences, hearing different things. That's where foresight is developed, and that's a great way to reduce error, and increase the efficacy of your product, service, or message.
So I think I've laid out a pretty good practical example, Jason, but let's give people some kind of one thing they could do differently. You know, we were talking about that yesterday for another client. You start by making just one subtle shift in how you do things. And so if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I have an idea that could change the world. I have a product that could change the world. Um, or I have an idea for a product that could change the world, but you haven't executed on it yet. Um, that's actually good news in this case, right? Other people might tell you, you got to take massive action. Well, hold up just a minute. Hold up. There is a time for that. That time is coming. But what are some things, like if you were to turn back the clock to the last business you launched or the last product you launched or whatever, and there's stuff that now, without a doubt, I would do first before I even put pens to paper, in terms of, creating that product or service. What are some practical ideas?
There
Too
was a,
broad?
there was no, there's an idea that came to my mind that, I'll make this relevant. It's fine. So I had hired a salesperson at one point in time, because I thought, the company needed a salesperson, and we were selling, business strategy, technology, communication stuff. And there was a gentleman who, he came with a recommendation from one other individual that I knew. And I wanted a salesperson. That was fundamentally what happened. I wanted a salesperson, and I have a proclivity towards helping people out. And those two collided, and I hired a salesperson who had been a sales manager, not a salesperson.
Hmm.
And he became a salesperson because he was struggling in this sales management role that he had recently been terminated from. And I hired him. Through the course of several years, kept him on board, tried to coach him on how to go sell, suggested ideas for him to sell, created an entirely new and very expensive product for him to sell, all of which he did not sell because he was a bad salesperson. I should have fired him. And prior to that, I should not have hired him. But I wanted a salesperson and I wanted to help him out. All of which my company didn't care about. If I look just from the company's perspective, did the company want a salesperson? No. The company wants sales.
Yeah.
Does the company want to help people? No. Why? Because it's not a charity. Jason wants to. Those are two different things. And much like entrepreneurs get hung up on, I want to do this and I want to do it for good reasons, they embark down a path that they should never go down because they want to. When in fact, the business, if someone spoke on behalf of your business doesn't want it. And you don't want the thing you keep thinking you want. You want the results of the thing that you think, the thing you say you want. I didn't need or want a salesperson. I wanted sales.
Yeah.
If I would have, at that point in time, paused a little bit and not had the ability, in some ways, not had the ability to just write a check to hire him, I would never have hired him. I would have stopped. I would have been forced to stop. And there is a huge lesson in that. That cost me so much time and money to eventually fire him anyhow and close down the product I had launched to help him sell stuff. Very expensive lesson. And that's no different than what entrepreneurs go through. So I think some really helpful advice would be figure out what your business actually needs. What does your business want out of this? And are you sure it's your business or is it you? And if you can't distinguish between the two, you have got to go swallow your pride and talk to somebody and say, I'm not certain whether I need this or my business needs this. And entrepreneurs get this wrong all the time. They conflate their desire for their business's desire, and they're not the same thing.
You know, that's interesting that you say that because for whatever reason, this part, the same sort of thing you're describing to me, specifically was something I for some reason saw coming with hiring people into my team. So that I've almost never made a mistake when I've actually done it. It's come to the point that they actually get work. Now, of course, mine are all freelancers, so it's a different, it's not like hiring employees, but I purposely said to the existing team members, would you mind being on a call with this person? I'm thinking about hiring them, but I want to make sure that you sense, and these are just young freelancers who would probably say, why do you want my opinion? Oh, it matters immensely to me because I don't want to have to supervise and separate a bunch of young people who are squabbling with each other over whose job is whose. I don't want to have to do that. So I'm thinking about that, but I did get it wrong one time. And I got it wrong because I came across somebody who I was building a very close relationship with, who had a literary talent, who in many ways was a young man after my own heart, and who was working jobs he didn't really care for, and who I hoped would be able to take income here and for me and supplement and do some other things he was working on and support himself. And for a little while, it seemed like it was working out. After a while, the others started to say, we're having to chase this person a lot to get stuff done. And yet I was so invested in trying to help him that it took me way longer than it should have to fire him. Eventually I did, right? Eventually, like, he wouldn't even communicate. And so I said, well, I can do about that. You should have called. And he was aware of what he was doing because he apologized to me and all of that. But, and the team never got like nose out of joint, disgruntled, quit, or anything like that. Thank God they didn't. But they could see what was going on, right? They're not blind to it. And so the decisions you make have ripple effects. And if you don't want to take those into consideration because you're fixated, like you said, on helping on what you want personally, bad juju.
Yeah. And I think there's an important awareness to have, since we're talking about, mistakes and bringing on people and whatnot. When we're working with other people, we sometimes, you want to help a person out. Helping a person out and seeing what they are capable of, or what you believe they are capable of, has to be coupled with evidence that they are able to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Willingness is interesting. Ability is better. Because you can have all the willingness in the world. I wanted to call you back, but you didn't. I wanted to this, but you didn't. Like, at the end of the day, you didn't. Well, I wanted to sell that. Okay, but you didn't. I think I can. Well, I think you can too, but you don't seem to be able to. And at some point in time, you go, there's 7.5 billion people on the planet. And Jason feels bad for you. My company does not care. Paul, right? You feel bad. You want to coach, you want to mentor. You talked about, hey, this couple that I'm mentoring. All right. That's great. But from a business perspective, we get into those situations where we're like, I'm mentoring this person, particularly, young entrepreneurs who are like, throw it as a feather in the cap. Like, I get to mentor this person because everybody thinks I'm amazing because I'm an entrepreneur. And it's like, all right. Yeah. Well, is your business the business of mentoring? No, not.
No.
Is it, helping struggling people out? That might be an okay benefit if they can also do something for your business. Or if they can't, then help them as an individual.
Yeah.
And for tax purposes or whatever, do it through your business. But you better know that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because otherwise things get so mixed up that we become our business and our lives become like conjoined twins. Different thoughts, same body.
Yeah.
And then what do you do? And what happens is like, there's this group of conjoined twins. They were over TLC and that type of stuff. They got married. Dude, they got married to two different people.
I'm trying to picture how that works.
Aren't we all? And
Sorry,
I wish everybody the best. But when we get in these situations where we are conjoined with our business and we want one thing, our business wants a different thing, everybody sees it and they're like, how does that work? The answer is you make it work.
It doesn't.
But you don't have to do it that way.
Yeah.
Because you and your business are different things. Your business is an investment, and it's investment of your time, your resources. your skills, your experience, your life. In some cases, it's an investment. If it's a small privately held business, your family has an investment in that. Yeah. But if it's really a business, at some point in time, you ought to be able to step away from that. And now it's something else. Otherwise, that's fine. You have a job. That's fine. You're a freelancer. Great. The business dies with you. It's fine.
Yeah.
And then you are a bit conjoined. All right, cool. But when you start bringing other people on, when you start growing and scaling, now you have to treat things in a different way. So circling all that back around, you've got to go get more information. And outside your own head, you have to get to the customer because your thoughts are neat, but they are incomplete.
Hmm.
I'm going to keep that one. Your thoughts are neat, but they're incomplete.
Let's create a meme.
Yes. And to your other, your other point, be very specific and break down, I think, some of those thoughts. What does your business need? What do you need? And be willing to be very critical in that process, because your business will be judged on the benefit, the value that it brings to the marketplace, and the results that you create.
Mhm.
That's why the point of business, if you look up, corporation, the intent of the corporation is to bring a monetary benefit to the shareholders. That's what it's there for. It has, in fact, there is a fiduciary responsibility that the leadership of that company to actually do that for the shareholders, or the shareholders could bring a legal action against them. A breach of fiduciary responsibility. You were working in opposition to the company. The company's stated goals were you were going to give us a profit, a monetary benefit, and you didn't. And there's reasons, specific reasons that you could bring that type of thing. But think about that now as a small business owner, your business. And when you put on the cap of president or CEO or whatever you fancy yourself, you put that
Yeah.
up.
Fiduciary responsibility. Yeah.
You have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders, which you and your wife are, around the dinner table that night. Did the business bring in, right? And you get to carve that up however you see fit. And we do, right? We go, well, we got more freedom and a little less money, or we got more money and a little less time. It's like whatever the values are,
Mhm.
be very specific about them, be very critical of them. The marketplace is going to be critical of you. And that's why we need to, I think, develop those skills, which takes, not everybody develops those. And if you can't see it, if you really can't see it, it sounds confusing, then you got to go talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Get out of the weeds. It's fine. We all get lost in the weeds.
Yeah. And that's just the way it is.
Yep.
You can try going a different way if you want to, but take it from somebody who's been there.
Yeah.
Right.
It's human nature. So we
Crash and
offer
burn.
forgiveness in that too. Sorry, you're forgiven for being in the weeds, but
I
can't be there
pardon you.
now.
I
Yeah.
pardon you like
Some
the
of these-
turkey on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Some of these decisions are big. Some of these decisions are big, far-reaching decisions that from the outside might look like boneheaded decisions. I don't know if you're following the OpenAI stuff, but recently, OpenAI and ChatGPT, makes these huge headlines, comes off of a big announcement that they're going to be launching these other GPTs where you can plug in and make them very highly specific to certain situations. Microsoft has a huge investment in there. And November 17th, Friday, I think it was, the board, out of the blue, fired Sam, the CEO, over a Google Meet call. After which they announced to the management team, by the way, Sam's gone. And another guy, right? Well, what they miscalculated was the investors didn't want this to happen and the employees didn't want this to happen. And so then all of a sudden, hundreds of employees are like, if Sam's out, I'm out.
Mm. And now all of a sudden they're being welcomed back.
Well, November 18th. So
Is
the
what
next
I've
day,
seen.
right? The co-founder of Twitch was announced that he was going to serve as interim CEO. So he knew about it before the board.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, but he knew about it before the rest of the company knew about this. So the board made some decision, and you can look up some of these board members and you can argue whether they should be board members of anything of this significance. That's a different story. But then all of a sudden, so November 17th, one day later, they get back into negotiations of, oh, maybe Sam should come back as CEO. One day.
Mhm.
2 days later, it's stalled out, and now, and you can watch it on X. People are coming out of the woodwork. There are offers to go build a new company. Sam and the employees and another, like, they're gonna gut this thing, take
Microsoft
all the
offered them
tech,
a position. Yeah.
and merge with somebody else too.
Yeah.
And now as of today, even, uh, it looks like they are. It looks like that if the board doesn't figure out what they did wrong here and how to correct it, that that OpenAI is going to be gutted, because all the employees, a significant number of the employees are going to leave, and Sam's going to go to another company, merge with another company that's been doing all his tech research, and go build something great, because they miscalculated in a serious way. The board miscalculated. A handful of people got together, decided that this is what we're going to do. Necessarily, because of the nature of their choice, of their decision, didn't talk to anybody and didn't realize that this is going to send a ripple effect and destroy the company.
And they think about the irony of this, Jason. What we've been hearing for the last year about how this is the intelligence of the future and nothing's going to stop this. And now artificial intelligence is being upended by genuine intelligence.
Right? Yeah. Why didn't they go into ChatGPT and be like, what would happen? What if I
Yeah, well,
fired
ChatGPT could have told them, if you fire Sam Altman, the rest of the company's going to go, right? But
Yeah,
they didn't consult
give me the
their own
risks.
machine.
Yeah. Give me the risks of this. I'm certain that would happen. Yeah. So it's just so interesting to me. We all get at some point in time trapped making a boneheaded decision, which has far reaching effects that we, for whatever reason, have screened out the possibility of those things happening, and go headlong into something with limited advice,
Mm-hmm.
missing all sorts of things, and fallout and whatnot. And that's, hopefully, hopefully those decisions that we make don't take us out entirely, right?
And if you
But
can't,
yeah.
like, if you can't be bothered to consider those factors, what makes you think a machine is going to do it for you? Right? So don't think, well, I could just turn to automation for this, right? We're satirizing that. The point is, only we have the power to do that.
Yeah.
Because only
Yes.
we can read. Like, I'm not getting on anti-AI rant here, right? Everybody understand. I appreciate AI and I respect it, but AI has no clue, right? We're joking about consulting ChatGPT. What would happen if ChatGPT doesn't have a clue what would happen if you fired Sam Altman?
I bet it would define the risks, though, and to be like, yeah, you could lose part of your staff.
No, that's true. It
It
might
would
have a
sure come up
modicum
with
of
that,
it.
I bet, right?
Yeah.
I'm on the
Anyway.
board of this, and I'm gonna tell who would even think, what we should do? We should do a big Google Meet call. Like, it's the stuff of jokes. Like, it's the stuff of, like, really? People don't do that. That's not even close to smart.
No.
So mishandled. And that's where, I guess the big question, right? Where in our businesses, we'll keep it tied to business. Where are you mishandling something because you're ignorant? You don't know enough. And worse yet, you think you do. And
Ooh,
that you
big
got
one.
in that situation because you're not consulting with people who are willing to tell you the truth.
I hold several international titles in those categories. Lest you think we're lecturing from on high here. I mean, that is, Paul Edwards is the king of doing that, which is why I won't do it again, and which is why we thought it was important to share that with you on this important episode of the Thinker Growth Weekly Workshop, where you can get copies of our books, What Could Be an Influencer Networking Secret.
Oh my gosh, Paul.
We got to end it on a laugh. We're heading into Thanksgiving. Of course, you may listen to this later than Thanksgiving, but if you do happen to come across it on YouTube or on the podcast before this hallowed and holy day in American history, we wish you the very happiest of Thanksgiving and forthcoming holidays, and we hope to see you again soon on the next episode of the workshop. Jason, last thoughts or comments?
You've done a great job. I appreciate you. We miss all of our faculty here at Thanksgiving. If you guys who are listening, golly, you clearly can tell this isn't scripted. Yeah.
If you're listening to
we hope to be a good example of working with other people and challenging one another to better each other, better your ideas, and get support. When you've screwed it all up, that's fine. Come to the workshop. We'll help you fix that too. All right. Thank you so much, Paul. It's good to see you, brother. And to all of our viewers, listeners, thanks so much for joining us every Tuesday here at the Thinker Business Accelerator and the workshop. Have a good day.